So, you think you know what energy poverty means, right? Sounds simple enough, being too poor to afford energy. But what if I told you the real story is this, like 40-year-old mystery? We're talking secret origins, rival groups of thinkers, and a global problem we can't seem to solve because we can't even agree on what it is. It's a wild story, so let's get into it.
Okay, so let's just ask it straight up. What is energy poverty? You'd think that'd be an easy question, right? But believe it or not, the fact that there is no single answer, well, that's the whole problem. And this isn't just some academic squabble either. This confusion has real, tangible consequences, and it all starts with this one major divide.
And here it is, the absolute heart of the confusion. See, if you live in a developed country, when we say energy poverty, we're talking about affordability. It means you just can't afford to keep your home warm in the winter or cool in the summer. It's a money problem. But if you're in a developing nation, it means something totally different. It's about a fundamental lack of access. You don't have an electrical grid to plug into, or you're using polluting fuels just to cook a meal. We're talking two completely separate worlds, two different problems, all crammed under the same label.
And you can see why this is such a huge deal, right? This isn't just a bunch of academics arguing over definitions in a journal. No way. This deep-seated confusion is a massive roadblock. It completely messes with our ability to create policies that actually work. I mean, think about it. How on earth are you supposed to solve a global crisis when the people in charge can't even agree on a single definition for what that crisis is?
All right, so to get to the bottom of this whole mess, some researchers did something pretty brilliant. They decided to map the idea of energy poverty itself. They basically treated the entire 40-year history of this concept like a giant detective story, a crime scene even. They went in, dusting for intellectual fingerprints, trying to trace back how we ended up so divided.
So how do you even do that? Well, the method they use is a fascinating field called scientrometrics. The best way to think about it is like a detective mapping out a huge network of phone calls to see who's talking to whom. They collected over 1,000 key academic papers. But here's the magic part. They then mapped almost 10,000 citation connections between them. You know when one paper references another? That's not just a footnote, it's a flow of knowledge. It shows who is influenced by what idea. And by analyzing this massive network, they could literally watch how the idea of energy poverty twisted and turned over 4 decades.
And what they found, well, it was a real bombshell. Their investigation revealed that the concept of energy poverty didn't have just one origin story. It had two. Two completely separate beginnings, two conversations happening in different parts of the world, totally unaware of each other for decades. It's wild.
So here they are, the two parallel universes they discovered. On one side, you have what they call traditional fuel poverty. This idea was basically born and raised in the UK, and it was laser-focused on one thing, the affordability of keeping your house warm. On the other side, in a totally separate conversation, you have energy poverty in the developing world. And this was all about access, the fundamental challenge of getting modern energy like electricity or clean cooking fuels to people in the first place.
And this timeline, wow, it just shows you how incredibly long these two worlds stayed completely separate. You can see both conversations kicking off around 1978. Then, in 1991, this really important book by Brenda Boardman comes out and solidifies that UK-centric fuel poverty idea. But here's the crazy part. It wasn't until after 2010, we're talking more than 30 years later, that researchers in these two camps finally started talking to each other, citing each other's work. For decades, they were running on completely separate tracks.
So you'd think, okay, after 2010, these two worlds finally collide. They must have merged into one big, happy, unified theory, right? Well, nope, not even close. What actually happened was the opposite. The field fractured even more, spinning off into 5 distinct, competing schools of thought that we're still dealing with today.
And just to give you a sense of how powerful and long-lasting these original ideas are, let's go back to that 1991 book by Brenda Boardman. In this entire web of thousands of research connections, guess how many times her work was cited as a foundational text? 277 times. That's huge. It's an absolute pillar for that traditional fuel poverty school of thought.
So here they are, the 5 families or factions that are basically running the show today. You've still got the 2 originals, right? The affordability camp from Europe
and the access camp focused on the developing world. But when they finally slammed into each other, these three new schools of thought were born. You've got one group that's trying to merge the two old ideas. You've got another that wants to reframe the entire conversation around this bigger idea of energy justice and human rights. And then you have a fifth group that's trying to kind of update the old affordability concept with some of those new justice ideas. It's a crowded field.
Let's look at a key idea from that merging school. It talks about the inability to attain a socially and materially necessitated level of domestic energy services. Notice that phrase, domestic energy services. They're not just saying electricity or heat. They're talking about the service that energy provides, like a lit room to study in or a warm home. It's a really smart attempt to create a common language that could work for both a family in London and a family in Lagos.
Then you have the Energy Justice School, and they take this idea a huge step forward. Check out this quote. It frames the problem as an inability to realize essential capabilities. This is a game changer. The question is no longer just, hey, do you have access to energy? The question becomes, what does a lack of energy prevent you from doing, from being? It could be preventing a child from studying at night or a person from getting health care. It's a much more profound, human-centered way of looking at the whole thing. Okay, so after all this history, all this evolution, has one school of thought finally come out on top? Is there a winner? The data says, with crystal clarity, absolutely not. The field is still totally fractured. All five of these schools are alive and well, publishing research, and no single perspective has been able to unify the conversation. So yeah, the field is divided. We've established that. But remember, mapping this whole complicated mess wasn't just for fun. It wasn't just an academic exercise. The whole point of digging into this fractured past is to figure out a path forward. And thankfully, the map they created gives us some really crucial clues about how to do that.
And there is good news here. There is hope. What the analysis found was that even though the field as a whole is all over the place, the most important, the most highly cited, top-tier theoretical papers, well, they're actually starting to connect with each other. It's like a theoretical core is starting to form, where the biggest ideas are finally beginning to speak the same language. The study also dug into the human side of this divide and found it's also geographical. Get this, the most influential authors, the ones at the center of the network with the most citations, are overwhelmingly concentrated in Europe, working in that traditional fuel poverty mindset. Meanwhile, the researchers doing critical work on the developing world, their work often gets pushed to the periphery. So the silos we're talking about, they aren't just intellectual. They're literally on the map.
So what's the solution? What can possibly bridge this gap? Well, the study found a really powerful clue. It turns out that the concept of energy justice seems to be acting as a kind of peacemaker, a conciliatory force. Its ideas about human rights and what energy allows people to do are being cited by all the different schools. It might just be the bridge we need to unify this divided field.
So, when you put it all together, the study's conclusions give us a pretty clear roadmap. If we really want to build a unified theory of energy poverty, we have to actively bridge these worlds. That means we've got to absorb the knowledge from all five schools of thought. We have to push for more collaboration between these siloed research communities, and critically, we need to boost participation from researchers in underrepresented countries. It really means we have to finally move past those old, oversimplified definitions that got us into this mess in the first place.
And all of this leaves us with one big final question. Now that we have the map, now that we can see the division so clearly, can't we finally build that bridge? Can we connect these different worlds of thought and actually create a future that has energy justice for everyone? The answer to that? Well, it's still being written.